I never thought I'd be the type of person to write something like this online, but I can't really talk about it openly with people in my real life. Too many moving parts, too many NDAs, too much fear that if I let one word slip it will come back to bite me. But I feel like I'm carrying this thing alone, like this knot in my chest that won't loosen unless I just let it out. So here it goes. For context, I work in corporate finance. Not sexy finance, not Wall Street screaming into phones, but compliance, audits, the boring kind of finance that makes sure money is where it's supposed to be and that things add up. I've been at my company for over 10 years. It's one of those places that grew from a family business into a giant corporation and somehow still has that family dynamic floating around, which is both comforting and suffocating. Everyone knows who's related to who married into what, and who's untouchable. The CEO is one of those old-school, larger-than-life guys. He built this company with his father, turned it into a multi-billion-dollar enterprise, and now basically treats it like his kingdom. I'll give him this, he's smart, intimidating, and he knows how to squeeze results out of people. But he's also deeply loyal to his family, almost to the point of blindness. That loyalty is how I ended up in the middle of one of the most stressful experiences of my life. A couple years ago, we had to undergo a major audit, and not some small, routine one. This was a government-level, multi-hundred-million-dollar audit. We're talking $300 million in contracts, assets, and expenditures that had to be accounted for. The kind of audit that, if something's wrong, people go to prison, reputations shatter, and companies collapse. That's when the CEO's daughter-in-law became my problem. Let's call her Claire. Claire married into the family about 6 years ago, and from day one, it was clear she lived off the CEO's name. She had no experience in finance or management, but she was given a cushy executive role anyway. Her title was something vague like Director of Strategic Development, which translated to her being able to stick her nose into anything she wanted without actually being accountable for results. She had access to expense accounts, budgets, and contracts, but she didn't really answer to anyone. If someone questioned her, the CEO would defend her like she was royalty. At first, I didn't care. I've seen nepotism before, and usually it just means you ignore the entitled family member and do your job. But when the $300 million audit started, her fingerprints were everywhere. Expense reports that didn't make sense. Contracts with vendors that had no paper trail. Money flowing through accounts that should have been locked. On the surface, everything looked fine, but when I started digging deeper, I found red flags that set off every alarm bell in my head. The first time I brought it up to my boss, he told me to drop it. He didn't even look at the numbers. Just told me straight up to leave it alone. That's when I realized the fear people had of crossing the family wasn't just whispered paranoia, it was policy. Nobody wanted to be the one to tell the king his favorite had messed up. But I couldn't ignore it. Not with that much money on the line. If the auditors found it before we did, it wouldn't just be Claire's problem. It would be the entire company's problem. And, by extension, mine. So I started keeping my own files. Every discrepancy, every questionable vendor, every personal charge disguised as a business development expense. The deeper I went, the clearer the picture became. She wasn't just careless. She was funneling money. Whether it was for personal luxuries or kickbacks to shady vendors, I didn't know. But the numbers spoke for themselves. I barely slept for weeks. Every time I thought about turning it over, I'd picture the CEO's face, the way he could cut someone down in a single sentence. I'd seen him make grown men cry in boardrooms. I'd also seen him protect his family, like a lion. The thought of putting his daughter-in-law in the crosshairs made me sick to my stomach. But the alternative, covering it up and watching the auditors catch it, felt worse. Finally, the day came when the external audit team was in-house. I sat through 8 hours of interviews and document reviews. My heart was pounding the whole time because I knew they'd eventually land on the files I'd flagged. When the lead auditor asked me about a series of payments tied to Claire's department, I had a choice to make. I could brush it off like everyone else had been doing, or I could hand over what I'd been collecting. I slid the folder across the table. My hands were shaking, but I did it. The fallout was immediate. Within a week, whispers were flying through the office. Claire was suddenly absent from meetings. People who used to laugh at her jokes wouldn't make eye contact. Then came the big announcement. Personal leave effective immediately. Everyone knew what that meant. The CEO didn't speak to me for months. I'd pass him in the hallway, and he'd look through me like I didn't exist. My boss told me to keep my head down, not make waves, just focus on my work. The tension was unbearable. I'd go home at night and sit in silence, wondering if I'd just destroyed my career. But slowly, things shifted. The audit wrapped up. The findings confirmed irregularities, but because we turned them over proactively, the company avoided penalties. The external team actually praised us for our diligence. Internally, it became clear to more people that I had done the right thing. Claire never came back. She quietly resigned a few months later, and the official story was that she wanted to focus on family.